We just live right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello and welcome to episode 191 of Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented to us, the staff here at Brewhoop. I am Kyle Carr. I will be taking on hosting duties this week. Adam is preparing himself for another challenge. It's a good challenge, I think. We'll say it's good enough. Riley was unable. He is a DNP medical, so he did not podcast medical. I was able to call in some reinforcements though for Brewhoop, who also had almost close to a DNP. Did not podcast medical reason, but we have Morgan Ross on. Morgan, how's it going?
Most of me is feeling really good. Yeah, no, I tried my best to be unavailable like a certain planetary member of the Milwaukee Bucks. But luckily, minus my wrist and my left ring finger, I am 100%. So thrilled to be here. Stay on your bike. That's my public service announcement.
I was going to say, I feel like the Milwaukee Bucks racked up some injuries, but we here at Brewhoop are really racking up the injuries. So no more injuries for us. But we hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving this past Thursday and a good time, a good break. The Milwaukee Bucks had a lot to be thankful for. They had only 2 games this week, but they walked away with 2 victories. So on Tuesday, they played the Miami Heat. It was in the NBA Cup. They were able to win 106-103. The score makes it look closer than it really was. No Giannis and Dame for that game, but Damian Lillard had 37 points, 10 of 17 shooting from the floor, 8 of 13 from 3. He made all his free throws. Some good contributions from Taurean Prince, Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, and Pat Connaughton. We even saw first quarter MarJon Beauchamp minutes, which I think that was the most surprising part. He made a 3. He did not do anything wrong. So we have that. Andre Jackson Jr. also had a pretty cool chase down block. And then on Saturday, the Bucks played the hapless Washington Wizards. They were able to walk away victorious in that one, 124-114. Giannis had a 42-point, 12 rebound, 11 assists, triple-double. So successful week for the Bucks. They have now won 6 straight games, which, you know, when we were recording, I think when Riley, Adam, and I recorded a few weeks ago, we're like, this was the best week they've had, and they won 2 games, and it wasn't a convincing 2 wins, but they had won 2 games. We're like, this is great. But now, 6-game winning streak. They're above 500 for the first time since winning the season opener. So a lot of good to come out of it. So I think we can start with, even though there's only 2 games, there's still something we could have learned. So Morgan, what did you learn from the previous week for the Milwaukee Bucks?
Well, broadly, I learned that we really live in a beautiful, connected world where I was able to follow games in multiple airports on multiple flights due to turkey travel on both days. So unfortunately, I missed the MarJon minutes, which was really crushing, but I tuned in just in time to see the Bucks nearly collapse against the Heat, and then was able to see most of the other game. I guess for me, zooming out, coming into the season, feeling confident in the top 4, but feeling pretty concerned / at least questioning the 5 through 8, looking ahead to the playoffs. There was a situation where you had Bobby and Pat coming in from last season on the older side, on the maybe wash side, and then more younger guys who weren't as tested on the roster, and primarily the two key AJs. And then kind of the 3 wild cards that the Bucks brought in free agency on small contracts, but still expected to be solid contributors. And I think that there were a lot of question marks with regard to all 3 categories of those players coming into the season. And those question marks were inflamed through the first 10 games of the season. But it's been really, I've really enjoyed for all 3 categories of players because of the dire straits that the Bucks started in, both AJs have really been thrown to the fire by Doc against every single bone of his body. And they've responded. AJ Green has been, splashing at home from deep and is top 10, top 15 in the league in 3-point percentage. He's shown also some ability to move and kick on that end. He's not just doing spot up threes. And then obviously on ball defense has proven not to be an anomaly. It's been a bit of a revelation, if anything. And obviously, this is all music to Kyle's ears. I'm sure he can. Kyle Stradamus saw this coming, but I think maybe more other people might be a bit surprised by that development. I'll just briefly turn the mic over for AJ.
I mean, it's one of those where I feel like with AJ Green, it was for me, like the biggest thing was always he can do everything that we have seen from Pat Connaughton, but not be like he can still shoot. He can shoot the ball. We all knew that. His defense has been a lot better, and I feel like it's significantly improved this season. Whether it was the bulking up, whatever. But I felt like AJ Green's defense has improved so much. It's like, well, we don't need Pat Connaughton because AJ Green is doing exactly what Pat Connaughton was kind of asked to do, which is good. And I think it's a nice transition plan. So it was good to see that. I did not expect, like I said, I did not expect his defense to be as good as it's been. I figured the shooting would always be good. He is always someone that he wouldn't be completely exposed on defense. So just seeing those two steps was huge. But I think the other part is with Andre Jackson Jr., we saw it, especially in the Heat game, where he can do just a little bit of everything. We saw him having to more or less be a playmaker because the Heat finally decided, let's double team Dame because he's absolutely killing us. And then Andre Jackson Jr. was able to make some plays. Obviously, he is not a natural playmaker. Like, he is not going to be able to make passes that Damian Lillard or Giannis or some of the other guys on the team can make. But he is intelligent enough that he can make the right play. And I think that's like the huge thing with Andre Jackson Jr. is his basketball IQ is high enough that he knows exactly what to do. And I think those two getting the burn that they have has really been helpful. But I think to extend on that, like with the guys like on the rest of the roster, I mean, Gary Trent Jr. has played a lot better since his rough start. I talked about Taurean Prince in the past and how he's done really well. I think we've gotten more from those guys as well. DeLon Wright was okay against Miami. He wasn't, spectacular. Gary Trent Jr. didn't have the best game against the Heat, but overall, Gary Trent Jr. has improved. It's just one of those where we're kind of seeing the rest of the roster be able to raise that level, and doing this without Chris Middleton, who is at least in 5v5. So hopefully we see a comeback for him soon. But I just think like the depth that Milwaukee has shown is starting to come good. And again, Marjan Beauchamp came in, played in the first quarter, was not bad. Like that, I think that's huge. He still has no future, but it was good to see at least, hey, you can come in and not completely F things up. And I think there's something like that to be appreciative of.
Yeah. No future. Didn't even know he had a present, but at least there's a present.
There was one flash of a present.
And I think, beating Miami without Giannis is no joke. And that really speaks to the newfound depth on this team. DeLon came in, DeLon's plus minus and general numbers through the first 10 games were worse than Bobby's, which is really saying something. And he's maybe not had the same turnaround as Gary, but at least has stabilized in terms of his fit with the team on both sides of the ball. Taurean is shooting fire from deep. I think is top in the league right now. Jackson's extended from the Wizards game showed him being on the receiving end of 3 of Giannis's Jokic-esque passes, and that's on Giannis, but that's also on their connection, and to find that this quickly is really encouraging. Obviously, the shots were going to fall for Gary at some point, and they are now. He still looks a little lost in the ocean in mid-range, which I was told he was going to be good at, which I'm still waiting. But He offers more defensively than Malik Beasley ever did. So I think still has an upgrade in that position. And then returning to the two AJs, I feel like the mentality with Giannis has always been surround him with shooters. And I think it's interesting. Yes, Ajax allegedly can shoot the ball, but he can't. And that's okay. And like, because he offers point of attack defense, because he's a facilitator, because his positioning, especially with the dunker spot recently, has been really encouraging. I think it's been interesting to see what things the Bucks have been able to unlock with having kind of a non-shooter, but more like the general athlete that he provides in those lineups. And ultimately, I mean, we were talking about those five guys filling out the 5 through 9 in a potential 9-man playoff rotation, and we haven't even talked about Bobby and Pat, who do have pulses. Maybe maybe we wouldn't be thrilled to see them out against Boston or Cleveland, but in a pinch, they're decent guys to have around. Even if Pat seems to be pretty much, like you said, permanently supplanted by AJ Green. And Bobby's going to be there for height minutes, but hopefully that'll dwindle when Giannis and Brooke are playing almost entirely in the playoffs. So ultimately, I feel like a big question mark coming into the season for me feels a lot more like a period, if not an exclamation point. And that feels nice.
Yeah, I think with this change that Doc made with having Gary Trent Jr. come off the bench is it gave Milwaukee an offensive, like you mentioned, like he has more of that mid-range and defensive capability. And I think the biggest thing is it takes Bobby out of having to be that guy to provide that offensive. He doesn't have to carry the load for the bench, basically. Like you still have Gary Trent Jr. And with the minutes that it seems like Doc's trying to do with having Giannis and Dame not completely staggered, but definitely have some staggering, the reliance on Bobby has decreased, which I think has helped mask some of the issues that frustrated us so much with him in terms of just like poor shot selection, poor overall play. That lower reliance has definitely made it so that it's more palpable to deal with the Bobby Portis minutes. He's still, I wouldn't say he's played really that well. I would say the Indiana Pacers game, that was probably his best one recently. But I mean, he's still not shooting the ball that well from three. He's still hovering around 6-7 rebounds, which isn't terrible. But, again, it was one of those things where it's like there's still times where like, Bobby, please just grab the stinking ball. But I think that's kind of the nice thing. With Pat Connaughton, I mean, yeah, it seems when there is enough health, he's not going to be playing that much. And that's before Chris Middleton comes in. So that's another player that'll take away those minutes from Pat. I am curious in terms of like what that 8-man rotation will be. I'm sure Riley, Adam, and I will have to do an 8-man rotation next time we record. But it does feel as though it is kind of more solidified of like Pat's definitely fading into the background. It's going to be, Giannis, Dame, Brooke are going to be like that core three until Chris comes back. Hopefully Taurean Prince is not too roughed up so that he would be another one. And it kind of feels like, all right, those four for sure. You still have Andre Jackson Jr., you still have AJ Green, and then you can kind of just get the contributions that you need from a couple other bench players.
Right. And I think for me, we talk about what's the point of the regular season, and obviously the winning has helped recently, but I feel like my interest in the regular season has also increased as it feels like there actually is utility to it. Like we have new additions and we're allowing them to have time to be able to sync with the top three, with the top four for Gary and TP and DeLon. And then we have, still have 60 games or so for the AJs to get all of the rookie or younger mistakes out of their system. And it provides, as a fan, it makes it more enjoyable to tune in, certainly. But I think that with the AJ specifically, I think acknowledging that those rookie mistakes will happen, acknowledging that they're increasingly offset by a lot of positive plays. But also, I think for me, it really, how we're framing those mistakes, not just as mistakes, but also they're playing more, they're more part of the action. Yeah, they're going to turn the ball over. The ball's in their hands more. We need to have a slightly longer leash with them as they become more involved on both sides of the floor, as they get more minutes as the season progresses. Yeah, if this playoff started today, I don't know what your level of confidence would be with them in the 8-man rotation against Boston or Cleveland, but I'm definitely feeling better maybe compared to our other options, but I'm increasingly getting to that idea of feeling excited for them being in that rotation.
Yeah, I would definitely say with Boston, it's always just like a crapshoot. Because I feel like with Boston, it's more of if the Celtics hit their shots, that's the biggest problem. Can Milwaukee keep up? With Cleveland, I feel good about Cleveland just because it seems as though, yes, they're playing really, really well, but when things slow down, I think that could help suit Milwaukee. With Boston, it's just more of it kind of depends on if Boston hits shots. And Boston just has more depth, like better depth and more depth than Milwaukee. So it's more on, can Giannis and Dame do what is needed to carry them, as opposed to like the bench guys against Boston. For Cleveland, I think it would come down to that, though.
That makes sense.
So yeah, we talked about the players 5 through 8 and the contributions from the younger players. For me, my point was when Giannis or Dame or both take the lead baton, things go well. We saw it against Miami. That was Dame. Dame decided, all right, Giannis is out. I got this. Decided to set the tone for Milwaukee and kind of pace them. Where yes, even though it got close at the end, it was really Dame's first half basically let Milwaukee get into the rhythm that they did. And then on Saturday with Giannis just doing a little bit of everything. He was getting a couple, he was making passes that we haven't seen. As you said, Jokic-esque. He was making those passes. He was able to get everyone involved. You talked about Taurean Prince getting 3 of those assists. His rebound was good. He was still efficient. He had a very high usage rate. I think he had a 43% usage rate, which, you know what? When you are that good right now, go for it. Do what you need to do. But I think we've seen, I don't know what has, I know there's talk about the communication and things just clicking, but I think what Milwaukee has realized is it's still Giannis's team. This team still Giannis sets the bar. Giannis is the one that you look to him and you see if he is going to bring it, if he's able to do it, everyone else can follow. And Dame is someone that, when needed, he's going to be able to make those plays. But it all starts with Giannis. And if Giannis is out, then it starts with Dame. And if both of them are there, they're kind of like the 1-2. You kind of look and it's like, all right, you got president and VP. And it's like, all right, can I trust these two to lead us? Yes. All right, perfect. We go. So I think that was, for me, the biggest thing that I noticed with these games, just because it was, both of them were kind of like in the aspect of what we expected from the two. Dame can get hot. Dame can make shots left, right, and center. He's going to be able to just score in bunches. But when needed, he can get the assists. He can make the passes. Dame has had very good assist numbers this season. I think he had 10 assists last night to go along with 25 points. So even though Giannis was kind of the fulcrum and pretty much just had a hand in everything, you still had Damian Lillard able to come in and just say, okay, I can take this. He played more minutes than Giannis, and he was able to still hit some shots. He was able to get to the free throw. He still made all of his free throws, but really his passing, Dame was a team high plus 12 in that game. So for me, I feel like those two are the ones where they set the tone. They're the pacemakers. They're the ones that you look to. And we've seen it not just this past week, but the previous week, during Milwaukee's win streak, more or less. It's been either Giannis has set the tone, whether it was the 59-point game against the Pistons, whether it's the Rockets, whether it's you've seen one of these two be able to kind of lead the charge. And even in the games even the Hornets game that they lost, that was no fault of Giannis. Giannis was, again, very efficient, getting everyone else involved. It just, unfortunately, they didn't have Dame in that one. So I think for me, well, yes, it's good that, players 5 through 8 are contributing to helping out. Milwaukee doesn't get anywhere if Giannis and Dame are dialed in.
Yeah, and it's a good compliment. Um, I mean, yeah, Giannis is taken for granted, but has paid that off this season. He's continued to be absolutely excellent for the most part. And if it weren't for the team record, probably would be a lot more central in MVP discussions. Um, Dame has also been excellent, and I think that was more of a question mark coming into the season. The idea that he was too old to, live up to his top 75 reputation, but it seems like the offseason did him well. It seems like he's been, yeah, scoring on all levels, maybe even a little friskier on the other end of the court. It's been good to see. And then obviously beyond their individual talent, it just seems like there's a lot more two-man game going on between them, whether it's not just pick and roll, but just in general being able to move around each other with Giannis as that fulcrum, like you said. And that's been really key to a lot of the Bucks offensive sets. And I think combining the amount of their two-man game with contributions and just ball movement among all the other key players, not to pick on Bobby specifically, but just at least, I don't know if the numbers bear this out, but at least this week it seems like I don't remember too many Bobby post-ups. If anything, I remember Bobby getting the ball in the post and then actually passing it just miraculously. And I think that just speaks to um, the role players offer that, but it really does come down to Giannis and Dame to be able to unlock the chemistry between the two of them to be able to set themselves as well as their teammates up for success. So yeah, right there with you, and I think it shows how well they click together, and then when there's just one of them, the fact that they're still able to carry the team, put the team on their shoulders is really good to see.
Yeah, I'm gonna say in the last 10 games, Giannis has had 35.4 points, 7.9 assists, 11 rebounds. Dame in the last 10, he's played 7 of them, but 9.3 assists to go along with 24 points. And this is him not shooting at the best level. Like it's only been 35% is what he's shooting from three. So even despite not hitting his shots as frequently as we would like, I know a lot of that is kind of the Charlotte and Indiana game and the Chicago, like there was like a 3-game stretch between Chicago, Indiana, Charlotte, where he just wasn't shooting the ball as well, but he was still, I mean, against Indiana, he had 13 assists. Against Chicago, he had like 10. So he was still getting his teammates involved, but to play at that level, I think it also kind of settles the nerves in terms of all this talk of like, oh, they're not clicking. Oh, it's not going well. Oh, it's not, maybe this isn't the best fit. I mean, there's still questions, could we see more of that pick and roll effectiveness? Yes. Could we see better shooting from Dame more consistently? Yes. But at the same time, it feels like at the beginning of the season, they just both looked like two complete, like on polar opposites. It kind of felt a little bit like last year. It was kind of like, all right, are you going to do it? Am I going to do it? Like, what are we doing here? We're not sure. So that's what I felt at the beginning. And then lately, yes, it's gotten better. And I think the other aspect you mentioned, Dame actually getting an offseason, I think that helps as well. I mean, he didn't do too much last offseason because he was hoping he'd get traded to Miami. So he didn't want to do anything on his end to jeopardize the trade. And then you come in late to Milwaukee, it's completely different. While this year, it's like, okay, you had your offseason, you could do your normal approach to it. And I think we're seeing those dividends. So I think the big question then, I know you mentioned like, is this going to be like with Boston and Cleveland? And I think that's still something I want to see because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think there's been a game where both of them have been available against Boston. I could be wrong, but I feel like there's like, I don't know if both of them have been available against Boston. And I know in one of the Cleveland games, they didn't have Giannis. So that is where I'm still kind of wanting to double check. And that's where I'm still like, before I pump the brakes, yes, it is easier opponents. So I don't want to get too carried away. But in terms of regular season, yeah, this is why you want to have the regular season so you get your rhythm and you get where you need to be.
Yeah. It also helps shift the one of the kind of the annoying rejoinders in the beginning nadir of the season was wait till we have Chris. Like, we may be 2-8 now, but everything will be fixed when we have Chris. And I feel like by virtue of flipping it around and unlocking what we're doing with Giannis and Dame. Yes, with the caveat of a much easier schedule, i.e., not playing Cleveland and Boston both twice in the first 10 games, which is ridiculous in hindsight. But the Chris question becomes more of like a strength than like a deficit question. It's like, okay, Chris isn't here to solve weaknesses. Chris is here to like add strengths, and like we're already seeing a lot of good distribution from Giannis and Dame, and Chris can facilitate that even more. We're already seeing them unlocking a lot of scoring within themselves, and Chris is obviously going to continue to do that. So thinking about how their two-man game can then play off of having like another person like Chris on the floor, which they really don't have another player of that caliber. If and when he comes back, fingers crossed it'll be soon. But hopefully there's still enough runway in the regular season and his health stays with us that he can be integrated into the good stuff that they've got going on.
Yeah. And I will also preface, the Wizards did not have any potential answer for Giannis. Poor Alex Sarr is just getting abused by him. I feel bad. Like, it was not fair. This is where, like, with the Wizards, like, why are you doing this? Like, I'm glad that the Bucks realize, yeah, this guy can't guard Giannis, so let's just keep letting him do whatever he wants. So I did feel bad for Sarr. But on the other hand, I'm like, hey, Malcolm Brogdon, you want to come back to Milwaukee? Because, like, I know I said you weren't worth the money. That was years ago. Bygones be bygones.
The Wizards are such a island of misfit toys. It's really something. That's all my thoughts on the matter.
I mean, if they get Cooper Flag, this will all be worth it. But at the same time, if they don't get Cooper Flag, that's like, all right, well, I don't know I don't know how to help y'all. So, yeah. With one thing I wanted to touch on before we kind of go and name some guys with the Bucks' recent winning, I'm kind of trying to think of like, is this like, do we think like the last more or less 10 games is what we should expect from Milwaukee moving forward? Like, does it seem as though this is kind of all right, they had a rough first 10 games, but they have turned around these last 10 games. Do you expect more of what we see in the last 10 games or what we saw the first 10 games out of Milwaukee?
Yeah, hard to answer without, hard to answer with the difference in schedule strength, and recency bias riding the current high. It's at least hopefully the last 10 games are the most informative, but I think that there's something to be said for game time with a good number of new pieces and pieces that are increasingly playing more minutes. And I don't necessarily see continued improvement, but I think that given like I see it as a linear progression of bad at the beginning to better now, and I feel like I think it's fair to continue to expect to be more in the better territory. And then, rubber will meet the road when we play Boston this week and other quality opponents. But it doesn't feel like the arc of the season makes sense to me in terms of like getting guys to meld together at the beginning of the season against tough opposition to then finally finding chemistry as the season is worn on. Yes, against less good competition. So I'm optimistic, but I was also optimistic when we were 2-8, so maybe that's not saying much.
I'm not gonna sit here and act like I was very optimistic at 2-8. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't think it would continue to be that bad, but I was definitely not like, yeah, they'll turn it. It'll be fine. Everything's fine. They'll turn. I was not bad. I will fully admit. But I also agree. I feel like what we've seen the last 10 games is more what I expect. And I think one of the biggest reasons is they're closing out games. I think that's been one of the bigger differences that I've seen from the Bucks these last 10 games is like they've been able to close things out where yeah, got a little dicey against Miami, but they've still held on. The Wizards hung around a little bit longer, but they held on. Like the Pistons, the Bulls, like these were games, even the Pacers, like these were games where maybe at the beginning of the season, I wouldn't feel as confident on where like Milwaukee would hold it, but then it would completely all fall apart. Where now it's as though like the 2 games against Cleveland, they probably, and Boston, like the 2 games against Cleveland and the home game against Boston, they didn't close out those games. They fell apart at the end. And I think if this was the Milwaukee in the previous 10 games, they win those games. They're able to close it out. I think that's been the biggest difference is they've shown that ability to close out games again. I think I saw in 10-point games that Milwaukee is now 6-5, and in 3-point games, they're now 2-3. So you would think in the 3-point games, that's probably the last like couple that they've played in, because it felt like they had 2 losses early on against the Cavaliers. Yeah. Those are very close margins. So I feel as though they're starting to figure it out and turn things around. Still could do a better job in facing teams above 500, but when 4 of those losses are the Cavaliers and the Celtics, and the other is the Knicks, maybe beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah.
So
yeah, agreed.
Enough of the Bucks. We had some positives, but I think it's time to go back to something we have been doing, which is naming random Bucks players. So I have one, but I'm going to let Morgan go first because he told me who he picked, and I was like, yes, you absolutely need to highlight him. So Morgan, go on ahead.
I may or may not have thought that Kendall Marshall was going to be a less objectionable version of James Harden. And not just because of the beard. So to walk through that vision. So he, point guard, point god, love to see it, dishing it out. Remember, him racking up assists. Obviously, the beard was great. He had I don't know if it actually exists in reality, but at least in theory, his Tar Heel connection with John Henson down low. There was a lot of potential there in terms of them having that connection. He shot some videos with Giannis back in the day about I don't know, just like weird like Bucks media team things of them answering different questions and I honestly can't remember the details, but I remember becoming endeared to him, and then he was gone. I don't even remember what happened, but I felt like he didn't reach his potential as a Buck, and that's too bad. I think that's pretty. I think he was a lefty. I think I liked that as well.
He was.
We need more. Like we need more of that. AJ Johnson, lefty ? Is it maybe that's the second coming of Kendall Marshall. The comparison that not enough people are making hopefully works out better for AJ. But I've always. It's so easy to like idealize like a point guard in basketball as like this like totemic like short distributor like and I don't remember the Bucks really ever having, not like yes in the drive sense, but like not in the same like distributor sense with respect to like I don't know Michael Carter Williams or whoever like but I thought that Kendall Marshall might have been that guy, and for that, he has a place in my heart.
There we go. Yeah, I feel like I really wanted to believe. It was one of those where you just thought, yeah, he's going to be the point guard that Milwaukee needed. And he ticks all the boxes. I feel like nowadays he probably could have. His defense was not great, but he was such a good playmaker that it would have worked out. But yeah, I really thought that John Henson, Kendall Marshall bromance was going to flourish, and it did not.
Yeah,
but
and then
I have a player that is much less relevant. Didn't really, you think of the guy like, I guess he did play for the Milwaukee Bucks. Like if you remember those like squares, like where you had to like say a team and a team. I forgot what we called it, but I feel like for this player, it would be so random that you would get a high amount of points, and that is Francisco Elson from the Netherlands, who was with the Bucks for like a year and a half. He came in at the 2008-2009 season, primarily serving as Andrew Bogut's backup. However, he had to pretty much play half of the game. Like, I think he ended up starting the final like third of the season because Bogut had a stress fracture in his back. So then he basically was the starter. And then the next season, he's still kind of starting because Bogut was, again, hurt, which was a theme for Andrew Bogut for that season in Milwaukee. And then he gets traded. And I was like, oh, yeah. And then you look at his stats, and it's just nothing impressive in Milwaukee. You look at it, it's like, all right, 2008, 2009, he played about 16 minutes per game, 3.9 rebounds at 3.4 points. And I'm like, you are a center, sir. What do you mean?
Yeah. We love a good rebounds more than scores.
What is going on? And then next season, it was even more or less relevant. Only played 11 games, 1.2 rebounds, 0.9 points per game. And again, it's just like, what happened here? And I don't remember, because Bogut got hurt at the end of the year, but I was trying to think, like, who was the other big that was doing that? But then I was like, oh, wait, that Ersan Ilyasova grabbing those rebounds. That was the guy that was doing the work that you absolutely needed when Bogut wasn't on the court, I'm going to assume. But
yeah.
If
only they overlapped. Imagine the pick and roll potential with the two of those guys.
Ursa and Kendall Marshall pick and rolls. That is what was going to power that ace seed.
that was going to get us the 43rd win that we needed.
That would have pushed them over the edge to maybe get another win against the Miami Heat instead of getting swept or gentlemen swept.
He is now, and I'm definitely not just currently Googling this.
There's no way he is still playing.
No. He is a coach. No, he was. That's unfortunate. He played. He was the director of recruiting under Roy Williams at North Carolina for 2 years. So I'm glad that he parlayed his. Let's see how many games he actually played in Milwaukee. 28. He parlayed that to the bigger and better things.
I'm so confused at how he ended up there because I don't think he has any connection with Roy Williams. It's not like he played at It's not like he played at Kansas or North Carolina under Roy Williams, and he didn't. Weird. Good for him. All right. We got enough irrelevancy. We're going to go to some rapid fire questions. So I have a couple for you, Morgan. The first one is going to be, what is your go-to side dish on Thanksgiving?
This is not about the Bucks. Got it.
Oh, yeah. No. There's going to be some Bucks questions. There's going to be some random. That's how the rapid fire works. You don't know what you're going to
get. Yeah. It's got to be stuffing. Bread is great, and it's essentially like flavored cooked bread, and you maybe put in just enough vegetables to feel like you can have thirds of it and not just be plowing down bread. And very vegan amenable. We had a great like mushrooms vegan stuffing this year that was also confusingly labeled, so not really many people touched it, which was more for me. So definitely stuffing.
All right. Mine is cranberry sauce. Like I'm probably one of the few people that absolutely loves it. Doesn't matter if it's made or from a can. I will get it. I went to my girlfriend's family for Thanksgiving, and there was a can of cranberry sauce. I don't think anyone touched it. And I was like, I will take that leftover with me for the rest of I will take that leftover. Don't you worry.
I do feel so. I'm pro cranberry. How do you leftover it? Because for me, like cranberry sauce and gravy, they really make sense as kind of binding agents on like the Thanksgiving Day proper plate. But then once you get into leftover mode, like they can kind of congeal and it becomes maybe like too much hassle for the payoff.
Honestly, as a leftover, I've kind of mixed it in with the turkey. Because the
Okay.
turkey is all like, I feel like with the leftover turkey, it's still kind of dry. Like it doesn't have as much flavor. So then
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
kind of put a cranberry on top of it to kind of mix it in. So that's what I've been
Mm.
doing. It's like just kind of mixing it with the turkey. So that way it still gives the turkey
You mi
some
do you
juice.
mix it in the Tupperware or like you put the cranberry on
I
top?
put it on top. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I didn't know if like this was some sort of like cranberry turkey marinade or something.
I should do that. I still
Yeah.
have both of them. I'm gonna do that actually. The problem is I just don't think like cranberry would reheat well. Like I don't think like putting it in a microwave would go well.
Yeah.
So all right,
Hmm.
got that first one out of the way. Now we have a
Good.
Bucks question for you. We can't always have, Thanksgiving questions, but for the Milwaukee Bucks, would you say right now in their defensive rating in the last 10 games, over or under 16th for their defensive rating?
Is it it seems better, or I don't know if that means over or under, but
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how to say like necessarily over under.
no, it's I will say a number smaller than 16, hopefully.
All right. So the
Is
number
is that it's a yeah, that's the okay.
all right, yeah. I was like, wait, how are we gonna find it? Okay. So for the last 10 games, the Milwaukee Bucks have surprisingly have a ninth. They are ninth in defensive rating with a 109.9.
Nice.
They're actually not that far off from fourth. Like fourth right now is the Oklahoma City Thunder with a 108. So Milwaukee's about 2 off of it. And then it's like a giant gap. Like the Clippers are significantly ahead with 104. Then the Magic at 103.5. And then Houston Rockets have a 98.8. I don't know what's going on in Houston, but it's working.
Yeah, Udoka might be a bad man, but he is a good coach.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to give up morals, I guess, to do well in coaching. The other question, are you a Black Friday shopper? And if so, did you go Black Friday shopping this year?
I am not really a shopper, period.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I've actually uh I don't even know if I bought on Friday I would have gone to Paradigm Coffee and Music, the Sheboygan legendary establishment, and purchased probably some combination of beverages and baked goods. And then I purchased I guess I purchased a ticket to see Wicked, which might be anticipating one of the later questions, but yeah, no traditional Black Friday shopping for me.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually my final question was Wicked. I was going to ask if you saw it, and if you did, would you say, did it live up to the hype that it has apparently gotten?
Was that actually the last question?
Yes, that is actually the last question.
I didn't even see it on the funny. So I was a theater kid. I have seen Wicked repeatedly. So for me, Wicked, like the source material, the musical itself, is essentially a 10. Like I really think it's a perfect musical. For me, the movie was probably a 6. I felt like the things that they were able to add to the movie, and they added because it was a 2-hour 40-minute movie for an act that usually is
Absolutely
more in
not.
the hour and a half territory. The movie format allows more depth of character and more depth of relationships, and you definitely got that for Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande as Elphaba and Glinda. And that was their chemistry definitely shown through on the screen. They also just added a lot of crap that sunk it to a 6 for me. I think the good, ultimately it was what I expected. In terms of the hype, I feel like from what I've sensed, the hype is more coming from people who were not as steeped in Wicked the musical and Wicked lore. And which is the other upshot of the movie, is that it allows that story to reach a much wider audience. And I think that, Steven Schwartz writes bops, and Wicked is a bop. And even if you didn't even see Wicked, you probably were familiar with Defying Gravity and Popular. So seeing those on the big screen as well as the rest of the songs was probably good in a way that movie musicals typically aren't. People typically get annoyed by the music in them. But then, like, Wicked itself, based on the book from the 90s, like the idea of taking something that is, a binary of good and bad, and complexifying it, and rewriting a backstory, and thinking about a lot of, themes that are really central to the human condition, and especially like the current political and social moment. I think that there's a lot of resonance there, that and just simply, like, I don't know, it's fun. Like, it's fun to reimagine, like, literally the Wicked Witch of the West being actually maybe even a good person. And that's part of what has fueled Wicked itself being on Broadway for over 20 years at this point. But I think that led to the hype. But I already know all of the spoilers. So for me, it was about what I expected, which was mostly annoying, but still ultimately Wicked on the big screen, which is cool.
Yeah,
Longer
I feel
and yeah.
yeah. Well, no, I was gonna say, I feel like Wicked is one of those where I've seen a production of it. It wasn't on Broadway. It was in Milwaukee. So it's, I've seen the production. Obviously, yes, Defying Gravity is a bop. It's a banger. Probably that's one of those where it's like, if you can sing it, you can sing. That's one of those where if you can sing it, you got it. I'm not doubting it, but it is interesting just because I've never been like a big Wicked person. Like, I appreciate it, but I did see it and I was like, I'm probably not going to watch. I'm not going to go to theaters and watch it. And now that you told me it's almost 3 hours, like, yeah, I'm definitely staying home for that.
Almost 3 hours for Act 1.
No,
Yeah.
that is too much.
Yeah.
But,
and I think even just to zero in on Defying Gravity, like, the cool part of seeing it on the screen is that she literally does defy gravity, like she is flying. And then Cynthia has an incredible voice, and then obviously I'm sure there's a little, production there as well to make it extra perfect. But because it is a movie, we don't just have them go to the attic of the wizard's castle and then do the thing. No, we have to go into the one room, and then we have to go even higher, and then we have to actually they need to take the wizard's old hot air balloon that he used to get to the Emerald City, and we need to, like, nearly escape in that, but then that didn't work, so then we need to jump off of that, and then the funniest thing to me is that, and yeah, I guess these are all spoilers, but
I feel like it's Wicked,
right.
like
yeah. I mean, but the moment, like, when she starts to fly, like, the whole triumphant, like, she falls almost the entire length of the building before kind of Spider-Manning her way at the bottom, Supermaning, and, like, making sure that she gets on the broom, and that's so that she can see her younger self reflected in the building, and have that have that connection with your younger self. All I saw was, it's this climax of the movie of, like, her finally flying and defying gravity to fight, and she just falls down a building. Like, I'm sure that there is, like, I mean, it's drama, and that's what they want in the movie, but to me it completely undercut what the message of the song was. But I'll we could be here for a while. I'll stop there.
Well, we're gonna go from one film review to another film review. I went a completely opposite direction. I saw Transformers 1 because I have 2 children, ages 4 and 3. So in my house, when there is free time, what do? We watch Transformers 1. Basically, it was kind of like a prequel where it was like an animated film that kind of just established a young Optimus Prime and a young why am I drawing a blank? Why am I drawing a blank on his name? Wow, I feel dumb.
Not helpful here. Sorry.
Megatron. Jesus. Yeah, there we go. Megatron. Where it was like we saw like their beginnings. And they weren't named Optimus Prime and Megatron throughout most of this movie. Like it was Orion Pax and D16. Like that's all they like that were their names. Like even Bumblebee wasn't named Bumblebee. So I think for me, it was kind of interesting because like I always liked Transformers, but I never like was into the lore of Transformers. So I can't sit here and look and be like, oh, nitpick this, and this, and talk about like that doesn't make sense. That doesn't fit their character. But it was actually like it was a fun movie. You know, I think it does toe the line pretty well as being like fun, goofy, animated movie that could be for kids, but then also like kind of dark and gritty, especially when it's like you see how Megatron becomes Megatron and kind of like when they realize like what actually is going on throughout the film, where it's kind of like, oh, maybe these people aren't good. And you kind of see how like the split begins, where you kind of see how Optimus Prime kind of goes more of this like morals and like we got to do it with like honor and integrity, while Megatron kind of goes more in the, you know, maybe this isn't what we should have, and go more ruthless and go more just like dark and realize like the things that you were told at like the things that you're being taught and the things that you're told aren't what they were. So I think it is kind of that aspect. It was interesting to see how that split becomes, and then like it gets to the end of the movie and you ultimately kind of see like how Optimus Prime kind of like dies, falls to his death, and then he kind of like, and you know, Megatron becomes Megatron. He like takes over, like he takes out the Sentinel. He becomes that leader, and you kind of see how because of Optimus Prime's like ways, he kind of becomes who he is and beats Megatron and exiles him. And then you kind of see like how that origin happens. And then like in the post credits, it was very interesting where it was like again Megatron basically forming the Decepticons. And be in that it was interesting in that aspect. So like if you like the lore of Transformers, this was like a fun movie. Then like I said, was it for kids? I don't fully know. Like there are definitely parts where I was like, this isn't really a kids movie. I wouldn't say this is a kids movie. But then there's like humorous parts and the animation, and like I feel like the first half of the movie definitely gives you more of like kids movie, and the second half is like, maybe older children, maybe not a 4-year-old. Maybe this is more like teenagers. So, but I did enjoy it. I think it was good casting as well, because I think they had Chris Hemsworth play Optimus Prime. Brian Tyree Henry was Megatron. I think they had Keegan Michael Key, Scarlett Johansson, Steve Buscemi. Like they had a very good cast.
Jeez.
As well. Oh yeah, like I don't know how much money was put into this, but they definitely went all in. So I had a fun time. I enjoyed the movie. I give it a 6.5 out of 10. Like I said, I think it's like a fun movie. It's one of those where you can just put it on Paramount Plus, watch it, go about your day. But it's not like a groundbreaking movie. But I think it's like for those that really like Transformers, I think they would enjoy it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of franchises have been bit by the prequel bug, but this seems like it was a respectable sense of like, yeah, where did these characters come from? Kind of establishing those conflicting themes in a way that, yeah, I that makes sense to me, having seen none of these films.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen like a lot of the new ones. Like I saw like the like first couple Michael Bay ones, and then I was like,
Yeah,
I didn't watch the other ones after, and then I was watching this. I was like, oh, this is a fun trend. This is a fun kids movie. No, but
no.
so yes,
It
go
is.
on Paramount Plus if you want to watch it. You can also buy the movie. I'm sure it's on a DVD by now. So we are going to transition over to our recurring segment with Morgan. Where in the world are you, or where in the world have you been?
The latter question is indeed the appropriate one. Yeah, mostly tunneled in here in Oregon, trying to start up life. But the week prior to that, was fortunate to spend some time up in Alaska I did a sibling graduation trip where my sibling graduated undergrad and I graduated grad. So we went up to celebrate. And perhaps unsurprisingly, Alaska is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, the brief account is that we flew into Anchorage. We spent the middle day in Anchorage, but we spent 2 days on either side in Denali and then in Kenai Fjords, both national parks. Um, Denali is absolutely massive. We explored a fair amount of the park and we never even saw Denali itself. Um, and we were there pretty much the last week that it was open because summer in Alaska apparently ends the second week of September. So, um, fall colors on the tundra, you had like, elevation and at each 1,000 feet or so, different combinations of purples and greens and oranges and reds and browns. And it was like a painting. It was absolutely gorgeous. And we were able to see a few critters to boot. So saw a grizzly bear, saw some moose. So that was pretty enjoyable. It was yeah, really took my breath away. And then the somehow even surpassed by Kenai Fjords, which um, essentially one day we were out on the water and kind of seeing glaciers that were going into the water. And that was, just mile long, massive brick of ice with various pieces coming off at various points and splashing into the water. And I think and seeing some flippered friends as well. But the glaciers being the main attraction there. And then the pretty much the best one of the best hikes of my life, which was on Exit Glacier, pretty much going up several thousand feet, and the hike transforms from being in the middle of essentially a rainforest to a meadow where there are big old chunky marmots running around getting ready for hibernation, and then ultimately ending up in like the mountains and overlooking the biggest ice field in either the US or the world. And essentially I learned so an ice field is essentially like the mama glacier. So
Yeah.
the ice field sitting like in the midst of all the mountains and spitting out the glaciers out everywhere. So the hike pretty much culminating at the top, being able to look over the expanse of the ice field and just ice forever. And yeah, all told, a variety of absolutely incredible natural beauty. And it's a hike to get there. And from Anchorage, Denali is 4 hours, and Kenai Fjords are 2 hours. So uh, definitely transportation involved, but um, yeah, it was a bucket list trip, and was glad we were able to do it.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. I was gonna say I've been to Alaska once. I did an Alaskan cruise
Nice.
back in 2019, but we didn't do Anchorage. We did Juneau and Ketchikan and
Kind of like the what's it called? The Panhandle.
yeah, more panhandle kind of, and because
Yeah.
we stopped at like Victoria, Vancouver, like Victoria Island, like Vancouver Island. So, but Alaska is one of those where it's like if you go at the right time, it is great. And I'm sure like going to the national park and it becoming autumn would have been. Oh, I'm jealous.
It was
Almost makes me want to go back. Almost.
yeah, and then I think and they have, I believe, like eight national parks, and we only saw two of them. And it's just such a physically big state that we both explored a fair amount of the state and didn't really overlap. So
Yeah.
yeah, and even Anchorage itself, yeah, had a good time going to some coffee shops and restaurants around. They have some really nice parks and trails, an incredible kind of like city museum that I balked at the ticket price initially, but then I realized that it was like an art museum and a science museum and a history museum, and like pretty much like all the museums were actually just in one. Like, oh, this is much more reasonable proposition.
Yeah.
And it was yeah, it was lovely. So um but yeah, it's so far away. I guess closer now where I am, but yeah, hopefully I'll get back there, but probably won't be anytime soon.
All right. If you can go to Alaska, absolutely do it. Just do it in the summer or first week of September. Do not try any later. So
Yeah,
we got that. All right. To close out the show, we have our prediction for the week. So on Tuesday, the Bucks will have their NBA Cup game against the Detroit Pistons. They will play at Detroit for that. Then they will return to Milwaukee the next day, play the Atlanta Hawks. And then they kind of have a little bit of a road trip going out to Boston on Friday before playing the Brooklyn Nets Sunday afternoon. So, Morgan, what do you think, prediction-wise, it's going to be the Milwaukee Bucks for this week out of those 4 games?
I do the individual games or the overall record, or
you can do the overall record for the week, or you can go game by game.
Okay. I perhaps undermining my optimism that I've expressed. I'll take the loss against Boston. Even if Chris is back, it'll be relatively rusty Chris, presumably. And I think we need him to beat Boston. See recent history. I'm conflicted about the Tuesday. We'll beat Brooklyn. I say with confidence, even though we lost to them before. The back-to-backs are always tricky, especially for an old team. At the same time, it's the Pistons and the Hawks. The NBA Cup, not to go too into the weeds of it. I do wonder, because the Bucks did pretty well last season with it. I do wonder if it offers, but just simply by being new, it offers some sense of novelty too, especially like a veteran team like the Bucks. And if there is a sense that we're 10-9, but like 3 of those wins have been in NBA Cup games, that maybe they are hyped up for it in ways that I don't really comprehend. At the same time, the Pistons going from absolute doorstop last year to suddenly being 3-0 in it, and we're hopefully still playing for a championship in a way that they're not. So maybe this is their championship in the way that it was for the Pacers last year, their run in the playoffs notwithstanding. So I'll try and show my optimism in the earlier part of the week by predicting double wins on the back-to-back, but not with a huge amount of confidence. So I think that leaves us 3-1.
Yeah, I go back and forth. I'm torn on the Boston. I feel like the Boston game is where I'm kind of like, because I think they could beat Boston. I think we've seen in these 2 games that Boston, they can be beaten. They almost did it twice. The Cavaliers just did it tonight. So it's not as though Boston is this absolute, like they're still really, really good, but we've seen Milwaukee playing tough. But at the same time, I'm kind of like,
they just got Porzingis back too, right?
Right. And that's also the other aspect. I'm like, But I can also see Milwaukee potentially not care as much, because right now, if they win against the Pistons, they win the group. However, Boston is one of the wild cards. So then it kind of depends on, like, I feel like they'll go for it because it is for like winning the group, and Boston can only get the wild card. Because there's a part of me I was like, well, maybe they just won't try, and that way they can avoid Boston as like that wild card team that they could potentially play. But I think there's like, depending on like the scenario of like how it goes, because like
is Boston still in play for a wild card?
No,
I thought it was.
No, I mean, Boston can only get the wild card. And basically how it sets up, I think it's like the winner of Milwaukee, Detroit, whoever wins that wins the group, hosts the quarterfinal.
Yeah.
If the Knicks win against Orlando, then whoever loses between the Bucks and Pistons is eliminated. If Orlando wins, then it comes down to point differential and the final spot between the teams. And I think at that point, the Knicks have of plus 15. Milwaukee has a plus 29. Detroit has a plus 28. So basically, and Boston has a plus 23.
Okay. So Boston's in that, like Boston's 3-1.
Yeah, Boston pretty much. They can't win the group. They can only get the wild card, and it's kind of tough to know. But I think they'll beat the Pistons. I think because of that, they'll go all in against the Pistons, lose against the Hawks, beat Boston, and beat Brooklyn. So I'm going to go 3-1, but they actually lose to Atlanta on the second half of the back-to-back. And I think they put more emphasis on the NBA Cup game than the regular season game.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Did a lot of math that I didn't think I'd be doing.
Yeah.
But that is going.
I can see them getting up for Boston, especially after the first two games didn't go well. They'll have a day off beforehand. I feel like being at Detroit and then at home against Atlanta, hopefully that'll ease the Segababa, but we'll see.
We'll see. Maybe we'll get Chris Middleton in one of those games.
Maybe.
One.
I mean, it would be very on brand for Chris to start by playing only one game out of a back-to-back.
That's probably going to be the plan, to be honest. That'll probably be the plan moving forward. But that is going to be it for our episode. Make sure to follow us at brewhoop.com where we will have game previews, game recaps. We got our Monday morning media roundup, I think. We'll see. TBD on that one. There will be a weekly Wednesday wrap up. We have our Tuesday, we have a tracking, and obviously you can listen to this podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and we will talk to you again in the future. Have a good one.